What's good, everybody? This is Brian, your host. And guess what, guys? The co host is back.
Live and in light skin color, baby.
Ha.
On the way to
Yes,
come to
sir.
live bright and on point at all times. I am not a walking highlighter, by the way. Just
Listen, man. We are here to improve light skin chocolate relations. All right.
all day, all day. We're gonna bridge
Well,
the
listen,
gap between
guys.
our two colors.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, listen, thank you guys so much for tuning in again to another episode of the two Preachers in the Popcorn Box podcast. Of course, this podcast can be found where all podcasts are available. And if you're watching us right now, you're watching us most likely on Facebook Live or even YouTube Live. Now, I need y'all to do me a favor. All right. Um, don't just watch the videos, especially on YouTube, but let's subscribe. All right. Like the video, subscribe, and then hit the bell. All right. That way, anytime we go live, you'll receive a notification and you can join in on the conversation. All right. Because we're going to grow our social media presence, and YouTube is an important part of that. All right. All right, guys. So, listen, we are talking about Terminator Dark Fate. All right. This is the most recent installment of the Terminator franchise. And it is interesting. It is there's a lot of great stuff about it, and there's also some things that kind of rub me the wrong way. But we'll talk about that in just a little bit. All right. So for those of you unfamiliar with Terminator, pretty much you have a group of robots that are enhanced to the point to where they are now trying to overrule and overthrow the human race. Okay, and so this particular movie, you have an enhanced human, um, Danny. I'm sorry, no, Grace. Excuse me. You have Grace, who is the enhanced human who has been teleported back in time to the present day to protect Danny, who is a child or very young person who has a key role in the future. All right. And so you have Terminators that have dispatched onto Mexico City to wage war. All right. Um, so, first off, Derek, what were your initial thoughts about the movie, and what was kind of the first highlight of inspiration that you found in this particular movie?
For me, let's just put it out there. All Terminator movies have nothing more than nothing but action, action, action. I love the action.
That's
Don't
it,
get me
bro.
wrong. I love the action. I mean, you have to be you have to be in a tune to miss all the Terminators to not know the reoccurring theme in the Terminator as far as the Terminator sent, kill the person that's going to stop, the AI apocalypse.
Right.
So pretty much that's it. Couple of things in it that I thought were interesting, and I'm gonna get to them. Some things that I just thought was interesting throughout every Terminator movie. There's a theme of grief
Yep.
in every movie from the first to the last. When Sarah Connor, and she was there in every last one of them, all the way with John Connors and everything else that was happening. There's always a loss of life and not enough time to deal with the grief of who was lost. So it's like, I mean, I don't, I've never paid attention to this one. And then it's like, are you kidding me? So it's like, you don't have time for grief. And it was something else that pretty was significant on the lines with that.
Hmm.
Sarah Connor told Danny, she said, funerals are not for talking about the dead. She said, funerals
Yep.
are not for the dead. Funerals won't help the dead, and goodbyes won't help the living. I was out done with that. I'm like,
Wow.
pretty significant though. Pretty significant because we're not having funerals for dead people. We're having funerals for the family. And then when oh, little Billy gone, and I'm not making fun of Grief. I'm not making fun of Grief by no stretch of the imagination. I'm not making fun of Grief, but that was pretty significant. That to me, that was the most significant line in the movie that kind of hit home. It's like that's pretty significant. It's like, okay, then what are we doing this? Because we so I'm not going to go into details on this stuff, but I thought that was pretty interesting though. So what's your take on that?
So the reason why I laughed is that I was actually at a funeral this morning.
Oh wow.
And that thought kind of came in my mind as to how the order of service went and like the words that the preacher gave to the family. It I'm going to be really nice. It basically was a reminder that the guy was dead, not an encouragement for the family to live. Like, and so it was just really weird. It was just really, really weird. Yeah, that face you have on your face right now is exactly what I had on my face as well. But it is a very key point, is that many times in movies, they never allow people the room to grieve. Or
Right.
if they do, it always seems like there's one character who never recovers from that. And that's
Right.
kind of, Sarah,
Correct.
we already know that throughout the entire franchise that the whole thing was, I got to protect John Connor because John Connor is a secret to defeating Skynet and then
Right.
defeating, the AI technology. And so I'm just going to give you a small salty butter since you brought it up. The thing that bothered me was the fact that how many times do you or can you tell the same story? How many times can you tell the same story or an extension of the same story? Because here's the other thing. If I had just learned about Terminator and I watched this movie, I would be so confused. I would be so confused because the timelines are so crazy, right? This particular movie,
Right.
technically
Right.
takes place 25 years after Terminator 2. And so I'm
Right.
like,
Good history.
what
That's good
is
history.
happening? Like what's happening in this movie? So the timelines, the fact that it was basically the same movie as the first two, kind of rubbed me the wrong way initially. Okay,
Right.
it just did. It just did. Okay, so one of the key themes of this movie is fate, destiny, and whether or not I can choose something different or separate for me, right?
Right.
Because when Grace hits the city of Mexico City, her thought process is, I need to save Grace. And she tells Danny
Right.
initially that your child is the key to the future, which was kind of a lie. It wasn't kind of a lie, it was a lie. In order to get Danny on board with this, pursuit of saving her life, right? Um, and so the character arc that you see Danny go through is she basically says that, hey, I don't have time to wait until my future self gets it all together. I
Right.
am in danger now. So we need to focus on today. We need to focus on what we need to do right now. So, how important is it to seize your today moment and not worry about what people have projected you to be or what you believe you could potentially do in the future?
That's excellent on multiple ways, which we kind of bring straight into what you did a wonderful tie into what this will be the fate FATE versus faith. Um, Pretty much, if we're focusing on tomorrow, we're wasting energy and can't get that back for today.
Yeah.
And so it's exceptionally important that we take full advantage of what the day brings to make it the best that we can, not looking for tomorrow, because even the Bible tells us, not think what, if the birds, so we go to, even scripture tells us to focus on right now
Right.
and not focus on, if the birds have air and, particular things that God has already given us and blessed us to be able to do and have, then our purpose in that day is to give credit for that day. It's not like you can plan for tomorrow, because here it is, you can't. I mean, you can. I mean, there are certain things that you can do, but tomorrow's not promised.
Right.
And the guarantee to be effective in that day takes away from. And see, here it is. If you have, let me make today my best day, you can kill the spirit of procrastination. And see, that is the other thing that we like to do. A lackadaisical attitude will come in play, and I can wait till tomorrow. I can wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow turns into months and years and
Oh, that's
eons,
real.
to the point where you can never get back. And here, then you get into this place that I wish I could, but I didn't. And so it puts you in a box because you didn't take full advantage of the opportunity to seize that day. And so with faith gives us the opportunity to look forward to it, but it
Hmm.
also gives us an opportunity to be responsible for what we have in that day. And if we did focus on that, do you realize how many major accomplishments that we can have,
Yeah.
and how financially secure that we could be if we didn't put things off? So I think it's important that you do what it takes, because even in the movie, within a day, Danny went to work.
Yeah.
She lost her father. She lost her brother. She on the run. She
Yeah.
with people she really don't know. Then she's told about her future. All of these things. So it's a lot to process and to effectively live. And here it is. She got to be pretty good, because I don't know too many people that can
Now that's real.
go through that much and still keep their wits about themselves. And I think the fact that here it is, the loss of life and the value of life was so blended nicely with that. Because
Hmm.
here it is, you got to survive to live, but you got to remember what you lost, and you got to remember what you're fighting for. You were told about your future. Your today was gone because of what you lost, but your present is still powerful. So it's very important that
Hmm.
Danny needs to move. And then you can't, with certain griefs, they tie you down. They drag you down.
Yes,
They
sir.
put you in a box that, and you can't. You feel defeated, and it takes you. And now you take months to let go of somebody. That person you can't hang on to because they're physically not here. Grace was saying we can't focus on that. We got to move. Even when she was watching her brother die, she was like, "Help my brother. I can't help him. I can only help you."
Yeah.
Saying there are certain people, if they're stuck in a place, don't spend your time being drained by people that are not willing to move or can't move. That's
Yeah.
pretty significant. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I got all that out of
No,
there
no,
quick.
no, you're good. Because actually, both of these last 2 points that we talked about really have a great marriage. So many times we put off grief because we don't want to deal with the hurt, right? We don't want to be consumed with it. Um, we don't believe that grief has a positive effect on our lives, right? We don't see how grieving could benefit us in any way. And if we maintain that thought process, then we are, never getting to the point of what's on the opposite side of grief, right?
Right,
Which
right.
is experience, right? Which is the patience that God has given us. Because here's the thing: whenever we lose something, whenever we go through a devastating, painful loss, in the moment, there's no end in sight. However, God never leaves us during the moments of grief. He holds our hands and carries us through the grief process so that whenever the time is right, we'll be able to put a capstone on that grief. And now we can use this capstone to build a foundation to the next part of our lives, right? Um, so it's just one of those things where if we
Right.
put off grief, then we unintentionally stunt our growth, you know?
That's good. That's
So,
good. So basically, you saying you put off grief, you put off life.
mhm.
So, a very unique point with, let's just go to Sarah Connor real quick.
Sure.
And she lost John to the Terminator, pretty significant. But what do you turn your grief into so you can make sure you can have a life, even though her life was twisted because she spent life killing Terminators? Do you
Right.
turn the loss of a loved one into an assignment to have a life to destroy the things that kill life? Pretty significant.
Hmm.
To me, pretty significant because after John was gone, she could have just lost it. But instead, she turned her grief into, unfortunately, it's a twisted situation. She turned her grief into rage, her rage into a tool, and then she went
Right.
to kill every Terminator once she had the right. So what do you do with your grief? And I know we didn't flip this whole thing, but I guess that's where we are at this point. But
Yeah.
I think it's important that we cover that though, because a lot of people don't deal with stuff like we're saying. We don't deal with it.
That's right.
The dark fate, and so it's pretty significant. That's the dark fate. Life is short. You end up losing particular people, but what do you do when they're gone? What type of energy do you have? Where do you put
Yeah.
that energy? What are you doing with that energy? Are you inward with your energy? Are you external with that energy? Do you use that energy to overcome? Do you use that energy to save others? Because Sarah went to finally save Danny and Grace, and kind of vice versa, the whole team. And so, do you work on saving life? Do you make a purpose of your life, or do you
Mhm.
waste it grieving over somebody that you can never get back? You can't do anything with that. And so you put yourself in prison. They're no longer here. So it's a lot of stuff that you got to overcome. So even with that, I thought that was significant that, and here it is for Danny. Danny had to overcome her own personal limits with the loss of life and the loss of everything in order to make it. And then she flipped it in the middle, almost to the end of the movie. She
Yep.
flipped it. She took the gun and she got to shooting. So
Yes, she
yeah,
did.
yeah. So to me that's the way we need to do it. But we can't turn grief into anger. That's the key thing
Right.
because it flips. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't make it right. But we have to channel it in a way that we can release it for better, not flip it for worse.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Um, let's talk about the Rev 9, right? The Terminator, the enemy, the villain of this movie. So my first thought was like, this man is unstoppable.
he a beast. I like it. He was good.
Like it was as great as Grace was as in her augmented human state.
Right.
She was nothing.
Nothing.
She couldn't handle this Rev 9. And I was like, how in the world are they going to overcome this? Like it seemed like it was insurmountable.
Yeah.
Like it was an unfair advantage that you had this Monstars on one side, right? And then you had
You go to
Michael
Space Jam,
Jordan and his
bro.
Pee Wee team, right?
You go to Space
And
Jam.
so I did. And so have you ever felt like you were in a battle and the opposing team had this insurmountable um, lead against you? Like it felt like no matter what you did, you felt like you could never come out on the winning side. 2020 has dealt us some blows, man. You know what I'm saying? Like week after week, month after month, it seems like um, we could never really catch a break because of all of the other pressures and all of the various cases of death and racial injustice. So it seems like the everything is stacked against us. But how do we live life when it seems like life is life has the deck stacked against us?
For me, and I want to say this earlier, is that we always focus on the limits that we have. Let's and so the Rev 9 is a very wonderful piece of equipment or person or spot to use, simply because I thought it was pretty interesting how he could separate himself
Yeah, that was wild.
and use himself to be a challenge to everything else. I thought I like that part. So for me, it was the unfair advantage of the inner man. I love that. I thought it was pretty significant because he had help, even though he was by himself. He had help, which says we have an unfair advantage to win. Why? Because we have the inner man. Do we tap into the inner man to use them to be beneficial? So let's kind of flip it. Weapon while the other half was driving. I guess it was a dump truck. I don't even know what that truck
Yeah, the
was.
dumb
Whatever.
truck.
Yeah, but I thought it was pretty significant though. So we have this inner man that we don't tap into, but that movie showed in an effective way on how a man can work to be beneficial for us if we tap into the inner man. I just wanted to say it. We have an unfair advantage against the enemy. It's not your flesh. It's the inner man on
Yep.
the inside. We have the ability to win because he was winning. I don't care what it looked like. I don't care what augmentation that Grace had. Grace was getting tossed. Terminator got tossed. Sarah Connor got
Left and right,
tossed.
bro.
Grace got tossed. Danny got tossed. Everybody named Mama got tossed. But Rev 9 was killing it. So all I can say is, and I'm done with it, is that the inner man, they got an unfair advantage when we tap into him, baby. That's it.
That's true. Very, very, very true. Because I had to go back and rewatch that chase scene because I was trying to figure out where the
So
other dude came from. I was like, wait, that's not fair. That's not fair for me to have to deal with the Rev 9 and then this other guy, right? But you're right. Greater is he
right.
that's in us than he that's in the world. And so we have to be able to use the advantage and let God do what he wants to do. All right. So, one other point I wanted to bring up was the relationship between Sarah Connor and T2, or Carl, as he wants to be known in this particular movie. How these are enemies. These are two people who um, Sarah, at the beginning of the movie, there's a flashback showing how the T2 kills John Connor. And so this death of her son fuels everything that Sarah Connor does, throughout the rest of the movie. And so she now is in a position to where she is facing her son's murderer. And the question that I have is, what do you do when you have to partner with your enemy? What do you do when you have to join forces with a person who believes something completely opposite to you, right? Are you able to put your differences aside in order to um, complete a goal, right? Tell me what you think about that.
Look, to kill him when she met him.
Yeah,
she was ready to go in because I think she said at one point, she said, "This is over. I'm gonna kill you." So,
Right.
I just, it's just the whole movie was funny, but I just think that it's a difficult process because you have to compartmentalize who you are in order for
Mm-hmm.
certain assignments to be done. Um, and enemies shift and enemies change because in different movies he was one person, he was that person, but in this movie, you know, certain things had to shift for her because Sarah was still grieving and she was kind of condescending when it came to Grace, not Grace life, but Danny's life. And so I
Right.
think that the Terminator and she realizing who was sending her information to get, John, all these other Terminators to be, and to kill him. I thought it was pretty significant to make her realize some other things and then to put them together in order for them to save Danny's life was pretty important. So I think it says that we never can count too many people out. That's why God says love everybody because you never know who you're gonna need. Make
Right.
sure you forgive everybody because you're never gonna know who you're gonna need, and you got to willing to be open to everybody. And so this movie kind of breaks a lot of boundaries when it comes to personal relationships, grief, overcoming adversity, dealing with anger, dealing with independence and being selfish. Um, so it's a lot to cover, but all in all, I like the action. But I love the fact that it did challenge with the T9 with the Rev 9 was wonderful. And but
Mm-hmm.
again, Danny had to grow to overcome grief. Sarah had to grow to overcome grief. Um, and then the point that Grace wanted to prove is that she was willing to sacrifice her life for Danny to be saved, which is pretty
Right.
significant. So there's a lot of things in this movie that kind of cover a multitude of bases. That it does say that we have to be willing to be sacrificial. We have to be willing to overcome the grief of loss. We got to overcome the rage within ourselves. We have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to work with people that we don't want to work with. It don't even got to be
Mm-hmm.
an enemy. It could be a coworker that you don't really care about.
Right.
God says, I love everybody, but I want you to effectively show my love by handling people the right way, regardless of what they've done. And so, and then you can't have a hidden agenda because until, Terminator died, Sarah had a
Right.
hidden agenda. Talking about, I'm gonna kill you, man. So you gotta submit, you gotta get rid of your hidden agendas because he sacrificed himself. And so she saw all that. Either she saw that or she missed her opportunity to kill him. I don't really know, but I'm just saying the way it worked out, it looked like she lost the opportunity, but I think she saw something different because when he was killing, Rev 9, there's always this extreme sacrifice. But when he was killing the Rev 9, I thought I think she saw this sense of peace because at least I watch him die. I don't really know. It's Sarah Connor. This is kind of catch 22 when it comes to her. But I'm just saying, all in all, man, I love Terminator just because of the action. But this one
Mm-hmm.
was a little different because it challenged particular ways that I never looked at it before. And I've seen all of them more than a dozen times. So, that's just me.
So
Oh,
here's what's interesting about. Oh, go ahead.
no, I said Joe salty, but I'm with you.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. I'm getting in on that.
Oh
Getting in
my
on
bad.
that.
My bad. So I'm
So
sorry.
here's what's really interesting. If you look up the IMDb of this movie,
Uh
it is stated that this movie killed the Terminator franchise.
huh. Really?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if
Now,
it was alive anyway.
look, man, it was
Don't
on
be
the
like
breathing
that, B. Don't do
machine.
that.
It was
I'm
on the
sorry.
breathing machine,
Continue.
right? You
Continue.
know what
My
I'm
bad.
saying? Right? Um, and so I mentioned it earlier, but I'm gonna say it again. The timeline on this movie is so confusing. So confusing. You know, this is the wrong movie to just pick up a franchise, right? But man, I like the
Mhm.
trailer for this movie looks great. Let me watch my first Terminator movie. This is the wrong one to do it because you're gonna be confused. You don't know what year you in. right? So I liken this timeline issue to the Fast and Furious franchise because, and yeah, I'm just gonna say
Bruh.
it. The third movie, technically in that franchise, takes place after the fifth
Okay.
movie. I mean, like, why would you go back like that? Confusing us, right? So that's one thing. And then, um, like I mentioned earlier, this trilogy, the way to end kind of a franchise, um, oh, the I'll be back, man. Why did they bring that back? Why? Sarah Connor didn't have to say that. She could have said something different. It was like, hey, let me go kill this thing, and then we can go back to wherever we're going. But the first line she says in the movie is I'll be back. I was just like, it's unnecessary. Then, whenever Carl is getting ready to leave his family, he's explaining what he tells them, and he is like, well, I told him that I loved them. I told them that they have to leave in order so that they can be protected, and then I won't be back. I just looked at the screen like, come on, y'all could have wrote something better than that. That's my opinion. That's my salty butter. The writing was horrible.
Oh,
Is
no
it?
comment.
Really? No comment at all, huh? Wow, you just gonna leave me out there? Okay, that's all right. That's okay. But listen, since DT has just basically left me on this salted buttered island by myself, um, I am actually going to prep you guys for next week's episode. So we mentioned the Fast and the Furious, so we are actually going to be watching the latest installment in the spinoff of the Fast and Furious next week, which is Hobbs and Shaw. All right. Uh, and so make sure that you watch that as well. It is it's a great movie with some interesting plot lines and plot holes and all of that stuff. So we'll talk about it in detail next week. So thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. Of course, make sure that you follow us on all of our various platforms. Um, Instagram, Two Popcorn Preachers Pod, Salty Butter Crew on Facebook, Two Popcorn Preachers on YouTube as well. Um, like, download, and subscribe to the podcast wherever they may be found. And until next week, on behalf of my host, DT, I am Brian, your host. You guys have a great day. See you later.